So much during the past few days to help us coordinate this marvellous air display for you. Without the support of so many local sponsors and supporters, absolutely impossible to mount such an adventurous air show as this. And we let them fly off to the wild Alexandre Roskier.
And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex. I will be the commentator of the Breitling Jet Team today. And it's a pleasure for us to be back for the outstanding air show. So the display is about to start by this great flyby. So the Breitling Jet Team is based in Dijon, Burgundy, France. Breitling is synonymous with aeronautics for many years, and we are very proud.
And they're also, of course, close to the Breitling headquarters in Switzerland as well. They're all highly experienced professionals, and I was mentioning my old chum Jacques. He's clocked up over 11,000 flying hours, and performed nearly 3,000 demonstrations in 40 countries. Now back to Alexandre.
So there is two parts to the Breitling Jet Team demonstration. The first part is called Ribbon. The 6 aircraft will fly together in an elegant ballet with small loops and rolls. They will draw different formation in the sky, and the 6 aircraft will fly at just 3 meters from each other. From 200 to 600 kilometers per hour, and with 6 Gs of positive acceleration. Of you, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Callisto formation.
Each of these wingmen comes from the French Air Force, where they flew fighters just like the Mirage 2000, the F1 Jaguar and the Alpha Jets. One of them spent 4 seasons with a Patrie de France, and another one is also a former Mirage 2000 solo display pilot.
And have a look at the formation in every figure, the wingman position change to show you a new formation design. Formation, and each formation is named after a collection of famous Breitling chronographs like Avengers, Callisto, Chronomat and Blackbirds. We have flown since the beginning on the famous training jet, the L-39 Albatros. The L-39 is a 100 aircraft with 2 seats. It flies at 900 kilometers max and is able to sustain 8 Gs.
Of course, the team would normally fly with 7 jets, but they recently trained up a new pilot just last year, where they need to perfect this display before they can go back to their normal 7-ship display, which they're hoping to do again next year.
Part of our display. You can come to leave it with us in Dijon in the back seat of our L-39. pleasure for us with this.
Yeah, the team is not just supported by Breitling, but they're also supported by a company called Apache Aviation. The boss of that is the team leader, Jacques Bournemouth. He's a very well-known guy in Europe and certainly known to many of us here in UK for many, many years.
For double cross with barrel roll. Jets are going 500 km/h and the crossing speed is more than 1000 km/h. Meeting number 3, we cross in a 6 Gs hard turn. And direction to respect perfectly the flight trajectories. Now coming.
Dukey, incidentally, just happens to be one of the members who's been with the Breitling Jet Team right from the very start.
In all over the world have incorporated into their display. Two solos, the number 4 and number 6, in a series of barrels in a line astern. Jet team is in fact a small team with just get ready your camera for the Ocean Master Wave. Turn left, the number 4, Dookie, will perform a hesitation roll. Solo display pilot number 4 is now coming from the right. The speed of his Albatros is over 700 km per hour. Culminating.
Yes, Alex, this is a very special moment coming up, isn't it? Because they've got some special fireworks for us.
Thank you very much.
15. See. Fantastic little machine, isn't it? And really gracefully flown. Of course, again about this aircraft because it's marked as Red 18. Why are you thinking it's special about Red 18? Well, that represents the Russian Soviet pilot and cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin's MiG-15. He was the first human being to journey into outer space in 1961, but before his cosmonaut training, Yuri Gagarin was stationed very close to the Norwegian border, just 40 kilometers from the Norwegian city of Kirkenes, as a fighter pilot flying the MiG-15. This solo moment. Very shortly we will bring on a pair of friendly forces in the guise of two British painted Vampire jets. This MiG-15 able to be mounted with a single 12.7mm gun. Had a Klimov VK1 turbojet engine, just producing a little under 6,000 pounds of thrust. Not a great deal, but could still get a speed of over 560 kilometers an hour and a range in excess of 1,100 miles with a service ceiling of 50,000 feet. Prototype first flew in December 1947. In both Poland, Czechoslovakia and China reached around 6,000, bringing that total production up, as I mentioned, to a phenomenal 18,000 examples. Saw conflict in the Chinese Civil War against Taiwan, in the Korean War, of course, where a Sea Fury flown by Hoagie Carmichael famously shot it down. The only recorded time that a propeller piston-driven aircraft shot down a jet aircraft. And then again, these were still in conflict during the Suez Canal crisis in 1956, when Egyptian MiG-15s fought against the Israeli Air Force. many people so passionate about the history of aviation. He also flew way too early, long before he was old enough to actually get a license in gliders. Went on to fly with the Norwegian Air Force and then with SAS Scandinavian Airlines, flying all forms of the Boeing 737. But right now we bring in...
Here comes the MiG, MiG-15 joining in just behind them. So the two Vampires now pulling up into the wide blue yonder. Beautiful clear conditions, that lovely deep blue, really bringing out the silver paint scheme of these aircraft. Those eagle-eyed amongst you, or indeed with the very good cameras we have these days, will have spotted, hopefully on that first pass, that the rather lovely Norwegian Air Force historical flight have painted their aircraft in Royal Air Force 100 colours to commemorate not only the birth of the Royal Air Force 100 years ago, but the very close association with the Norwegian Air Force and indeed the birth of the Norwegian Air Force after World War II, during World War II. Certainly it was fascinating chatting to Martin Tesley. Tintin, as he's known, he's the number 2 pilot and the leader of this formation, sorry, he's the number 2 pilot, my apologies. Jimmy Martilla is the leader. Former pupil of Tintin, Jimmy Martilla is leading, but these aircraft have been painted to commemorate this association with the Royal Air Force. I think it's a very moving and poignant effort on their behalf for our commemoration. There's 2 aircraft in front of us, well 3, as you can see, the MiG-15, which you know well. We've got the 2 Vampires. Each of these Vampires have been painted up to represent certain Royal Air Force squadrons, and indeed the FB-5, the single-seater, the slightly narrow front-facing aircraft, VZ-305, is painted in 72 squadron colours. So that is the 3rd aircraft with the single seat, is painted in 72 squadron colours, indeed a squadron I have served on. It is based and to represent one of the Odium Wing Vampire squadrons, which was then based out of RAF North Wales. The 2-seat Vampire, which is in the lead now, that is moving out to our right-hand side now. They're putting together now into a nice Norwegian Air Force historic 3-ship now. The 2-seat Vampire is the lead aircraft. It's a T11 version, and it's the livery of 4 Squadron, a very famous Royal Air Force squadron, representing the aircraft Whiskey Zulu 447, a T11 in service with that squadron in the mid to late 1950s. I think it's an incredible compliment for them to pay us, the Norwegian Air Force Historical Squadron, a huge compliment to pay to the Royal Air Force, and indeed to different strength to strength, to the extent that these days they're our partner and the F-35 Lightning II. So 2 up front now, running in is the 3-ship. They swap lead in the turn now, the MiG-15 in the lead, single seat on the left and the twin-seat Vampire on the right. That's the MiG-15 pulling out of the formation now. Vampires now rejigging themselves, that many aircraft did, and it's the first jet trainer on which student pilots could gain their jet wings. So to your front now, the 2-seat in the lead with Jim Attila and Tintin in the single seat to his right. Of course, with any aircraft, it culminated in much development, many prototypes, improvements, both power, speed, capability. The first F1 to enter service was in April 1940. Days of aircraft design and construction. The aircraft very modestly made out of just materials, least amount of heavy stuff to just keep that performance on the right side of useful. Up ahead now, there should be a nice break coming up now. Flying over the top. Are they going to split? No, they're going to keep it together. Beautiful platform top over the top there. It should be a nice top surface shot now for the photographers. That silver paint scheme. So that lead aircraft, the TLM, painted in the number 4 squadron colours, and the single seat aircraft painted in the 72 squadron aircraft. Now, because the Vampire was such a capable aircraft, it was so simple to make, fabricate, use and modify that indeed it ended up being used as the base for many, many changes. Indeed, the T-11 was the aircraft that excelled the most. Thousands were made, and due to its benign handling, a great student training aircraft. My father learned to fly and flew the Vampire back in the late 50s, getting his wings. Because the aircraft was so easy to make and adjust, indeed the first swept-wing aircraft was developed for the basic Vampire. This was known as the DeHaviland 108, the DH-108, and it was the swept-wing tailless aircraft as well. All this going on back in the 50s and 60s. This is before computers-aided design, all done on workshops and off blueprints. Out to our right-hand side again, aircraft running in. Jet pilot and a weekday 5th generation F-35 Lightning pilot. So I think that silver paint scheme really standing out, and you can see that twin boom arrangement. The tail fin, the tailplane, it keeps the aircraft nice, short and compact. It allows the jet plane jet efflux to go out behind the jet and allows them, those control surfaces at the rear of the aircraft, allow to counterbalance what little weight there is at the front, keeping that engine mid-position. I think this beautiful clear blue sky behind us is really picking out the flight there. Jim Mattila is well known as a Finnish pilot working with the Norwegian Historic Air Squadron. And again, these guys, really close-knit team, regular Air Force day jobs, and they've got this Historic Air Squadron jobs at the weekend. Incredibly impressive. So crowd front and centre, B-17B, the Flying Fortress Sally B. Sally B making a welcome return to Bournemouth here again. It's the only airworthy B-17 flying in Europe today. Based at the Imperial War Museum in Duxford, England, this 70-year-old aircraft, this 25-ton war memorial, flies as that memorial to the 79,000 Allied airmen who lost their lives in Europe during the Second World War. So look to the front now as this beautiful aircraft, majestic, just turning that underbelly shot now. You can see that huge wide straight wing and those 4 Cyclone engines. Operated since 1982 by her namesake and guardian Ellie Sallingboe of the B-17 preservation, Sally B flies thanks only to the help of a dedicated professional volunteers and the Sally B Supporters Club, one of the biggest, largest supporters club in Europe. And thanks to a growing and over 6,500 members, it's due to their charitable contributions of both money and time that this beautiful living memorial flies for our enjoyment today, and also for the commemoration of those US airmen that made the ultimate sacrifice. Now you can feel the rumble in the air of those 4 1200 horsepower Wright Cyclone turbo supercharged radial engines, generating some 4,800 horsepower. The aircraft weighs some 25 tons, capable of just under 300 miles an hour, flying for its 2,000-mile range. It gets its name, the inimitable Flying Fortress, from the some 13 Browning machine guns put into the body of the aircraft in some 8 positions. Normal bomb load is some 8,000 pounds, and that's what it'd have to fly, lumbering into the skies out of eastern England all the way over to enemy air defences in the precision daylight bombing raids of the United States 8th Air Force. Those of you with powerful cameras, indeed exceptional eyesight, will just see the bomb bay door closing there. Indeed, on the side of the aircraft, on the bomb bay doors, you can indeed have your name written onto the side of the aircraft through the website www.sally.org.uk. You can contact the Sally B Preservation Society, have your name put on, and fly as that living memorial, keeping Sally B in the skies for all of our pleasures, and the memorial of the United States Air Force. Out to our right-hand side now, the aircraft flown by Pete Kuipers. He's been a captain on the B-17 for a long time now, joining the family of supporters in 2009. Well known throughout the display circuit, formerly flew the Dutch B-25 Mitchell, flown for over 25 years, display pilot on the Dutch DC-3 and a Yak-50, also aerobatic aircraft. Incredibly experienced pilot and a commercial airline pilot with KLM. So a lovely top side shot here, Be able to chance to see the gun turrets and the machine guns. Lovely photograph here in this beautiful clear blue sky. The fortress gets her name from the alleged use of all those machine guns, providing covering fire around large formations of aircraft. Indeed, it was the complementary work of the daytime bombing of the United States Air Force. The United States Air Force flying their large bomber formations all together, close together, in formation, deriving mutual benefit and support and self-defense from all those machine gun positions. This, however, did lead to initially dreadful losses amongst Allied airmen. And indeed, the attrition rates, again, also in the Royal Air Force Bomber Command bombing by night, were in excess of 50%. They had to set a limit, some 25 missions for the US Air Force, 30 missions for the Royal Air Force, but the losses were incredible. This also led to her other name, the Flying Fortress. Indeed, they recognized the strength and build of the aircraft. They loved calling her the Flying Fortress because despite suffering huge damage, the aircraft brought many, many crews home against the odds safely. As aircraft, Sally B, she is a film star in her own right. She's appeared in films, perhaps most famously Memphis Belle, the David Putnam film, flown a while ago now, but again it just showed or portrayed the loss, the sacrifice of those men, all the way, a long way from home, alone and afraid in the quiet hours as they were over enemy territory. This aircraft now was built back in Lockheed Vega production line in Burbank, just near Hollywood, back in the spring of 1945. Didn't see action herself, but again, beautifully painted and evocatively flown. One of the latter 12,700 Flying Fortresses built. It's only one of the handful of survivors and the last remaining airworthy aircraft in Europe. There are others in the States. This aircraft never saw service itself, as didn't join the US Army, didn't join the US Air Force infantry until 1945. She then flew with the US Air Force, completing test work, modifications, and then was transferred to the French Institut Géographique for mapping work over France. Then was transferred to the UK and was bought, and in 1975 came to the UK in the hands of businessman Ted White. So look underneath our lovely underside pass there. That huge wingspan. You can just see how wide that wingspan was. At over 100 feet. feet. That wingspan is designed to generate as much lift as possible. These you'll see gliders with no engines, they're generating as much lift on as wide as possible wingspan. These bombers, much like the Lancaster, designed to carry lift, take weight, taking lethality to the enemy, and the bigger the wingspan, again, it counteracted by indeed the drag, but the power of those engines, that 4,800 horsepower, setting the aircraft on its way to Germany to do its job. Again, the losses were incredible, the sacrifice immense. Many died in the surface, and they were all volunteers for the United States. They volunteered to defend our democracy and fly for us. So here on this last pass, B-17, Flying Fortress Sally B, this commemorative last pass, trailing smoke out of one of her engines to commemorate the sacrifice of the airmen of the United States Air Force. Let's spare a thought, think deep, think long, lest we forget. But remember and give the B-17 Sally B crew a big Bournemouth cheer and a wave. They can see you. Let's remember.
As she sails off into the wild blue yonder, spare a thought and do your very best, please, to support this amazing charitable trust that manages this aircraft. Just go to sallyb.org.uk. Every little donation, ladies and gentlemen, an opportunity to commemorate and commend another vital aircraft during the Second World War campaign, the Dakota.
I think they come out with it. So go to prize and then it comes back. There's one on the first day.
The Douglas C-47 Dakota is without doubt one of the most successful aircraft designs in history. It became one of the world's most famous military transport aircraft and saw widespread use by the Allies during World War II and subsequently by air forces and civilian operators worldwide. Unsung hero perhaps, but certainly not unloved in many ways. It commanded as much respect as the famous fighters and bombers of that period. The C-47 itself is a military version of the DC-3 airliner that first flew in 1935 and was used extensively thereafter by America's airlines. Recognizing the DC-3's great potential as a military transport, the United States Army Air Command specified a number of changes needed to make that aircraft suitable for military use. That included more powerful engines, the replacement of airline seating with utility seats along the walls, a stronger load-bearing floor, and the addition of large loading doors. The military version of DC-3, which was then redesignated the C-47 Skytrain in the United States, commenced in October 1941. When production finally ended, a remarkable 10,692 aircraft had been built. Of the C-47s were made to the UK with nearly 2,000 Dakotas as the aircraft became known in Royal Air Force service.
Bournemouth University.
Of course, the DAC, as it was colloquially referred to, coming from the term and the name of the initiator of it, of course, the Douglas Aircraft Company. The aircraft first entered service with the Royal Air Force in India in 1942. how large numbers of deliveries then revitalised the RAF's transport capacity, which had then, until had been based around a number of obsolete bombers and general purpose aircraft which were poorly adapted for the role. The Dakota 3 eventually equipped 22 Royal Air Force squadrons and 3 Royal Canadian Air Force squadrons under RAF operational control. Coming by in a dirty pass formation where the undercarriage down and all the airflow is disruptive, this venerable aircraft deserves as much attention as any other because it just fought and was part of so many different operations, of course the most famous connected with parachuting itself, and in particular the landings connected not just with D-Day but of course also with Operation Market Garden, both events commemorated by veterans. And indeed, they dropped one veteran whose name is inscribed on the inside of this particular aircraft well into his 80s, just a few years ago. But at the same time, these aircraft would also tow many gliders into action with their troops affiliated to the Airborne Command. Far too quickly in so many ways. They are calling complete already. No doubt they have other targets to go, and the Battle Brit Memorial Flight works so hard. An extraordinary and gallant aircraft, I think, coming round for just one more pass. Dakota served in every theatre of the war, most notably in Burma, and also during, of course, the landings I mentioned during D-Day and the airborne assault on Arnhem in 1944. As a tactical transport aircraft, the Dakota was used to carry troops and freight, for the airdropping of supplies and paratroops, for towing gliders and for casualty evacuation. Its amazing ruggedness became legendary under the demands of war, and its capabilities were increased to permit it to carry a payload more than double the original specification. On after the war, of course, to get even more fame in various parts of the world and still fly in active roles, particularly in the African continent. But in those difficult years after the end of the World War and the Cold War period, when other restrictions